Welcome to America's Commercial Real Estate Show, your source for intel, forecasts, and success strategies. Hello, I'm Michael Bull. Thanks for being with us wherever you are around the country, around the world. Maybe you're on iTunes, maybe you're on YouTube, maybe you're on the show website, or one of the, I think we're on at least a dozen or more podcast sites. Thanks for being with us. Well, we have a very interesting show for you today, and let me tell you that this segment is brought to you by Barnes Creative Studios. If you need a video for your next project, check them out. And today we're going to talk about crowdfunding, and particularly for commercial real estate. And I think crowdfunding has been something that people were very excited about. Some people thought it was growing too slowly, but it seems to be really picking up speed. And I think there's been a lot of changes in the world, in the economy, and in commercial real estate that make crowdfunding much more interesting almost every day. That's what we're going to talk about today. Please welcome my first guest is Adam Hooper, and Adam is CEO with RealCrowd, and he's joining us on Skype. Adam, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on again, Michael. It's always a pleasure to be on the show.
Adam, looking great there in your studio with your logo. Very nice.
We just podcast game, so we got to have the studio.
That's right. So you have your own podcast. So how can people find that?
We do realcrowd.com/podcast. Everywhere else, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
That's right. Well, check it out. So, Adam, you guys are in the middle of this crowdfunding business. You study it. You know what's going on. So, what is going on? How did 2017 wrap up? Is the crowdfunding business growing?
It is, yeah. So we saw really good growth 2017 compared to 2016. Most of our metrics were up, 75%, 80% over 2016. So we saw a lot of good growth. We're over $4.25 billion of total real estate through the platform now, which 4.5 years into this is pretty good. Saw about a 65% increase in the number of opportunities that we brought to investors last year, and I think one of the things we're still focused on is the efficiency side of it, and that's one of our accomplishments last year was to take the transaction timeline that can normally be weeks or months in the offline scenario. We've got that nailed down to a couple days now. So for a real estate manager out there that's going to raise capital, from the time that you have an investor interested and committed to completed documents and funding, that can be down to 2 or 3 days. So it's a dramatic efficiency that we're seeing in just the process of raising capital, and then also growth in just the availability of these opportunities for both sides of the market.
Right. So I guess at some point, if you're an investor or developer, you're an established sponsor of these projects, at some point you run out of family and friends, and maybe you have more opportunities. So what do you tell sponsors that are maybe unsure of using crowdfunding to raise funds?
Well, I think it's depending on which route you go, and there's a couple different platforms and structures that are set up out there. By and large, mechanically, it's a very similar process to how you used to syndicate equity offline. So there's still Reg D, private placement offerings. It's just the regulations that changed that allowed our company to exist. It gives the real estate managers a way to advertise their deals publicly now. So the mechanics are the same. It's still a private placement deal. But you can use a platform like RealCrowd to get that investment opportunity out in front of 25, 30, 40,000 different investors. So it's really the way that you can get in front of investors now that's the difference. Mechanically, it's how people have raised capital for a really long time, just with the kind of typical syndication model.
Yeah, and quickly though, the benefits for the investors, and how low of amount of money can someone invest, and how easy is it to do it online, and what are the benefits? Is it the diversification? Is it the benefit of having an experienced sponsor running the show?
Yeah, it's all of that. So the biggest thing that we're about is access, right? And that was, I think, what we saw was the biggest change in this regulation was the ability to open up access that people didn't have before. And with the efficiency that we brought, we can get those minimum investments down from 100,000, 250,000 down to, typically we see them at 25,000, even down as low as $10,000 per ticket. So you get professionally managed real estate as a passive investor, so you're not actually having to do all the work yourself. You get investments down to $10,000, $25,000, so you can build a well-diversified portfolio. Like we've done deals in 38 different states, 80 different real estate sponsors. So there's, a really, really broad menu of assets that you just wouldn't be able to do as a private investor before, unless you had the best network in the world, which is unlikely to be able to have that much of a reach of opportunities. And so that's what we're most excited about from the investor standpoint, is to give them, low fee. We don't charge investors anything, so it's completely fee-free for investors. But to be able to give them access to these opportunities all across the country with professional real estate managers, that's a pretty big change in how this asset class can work from the investor standpoint.
Yeah, and I like it to diversify your investments, especially for investors who maybe are looking for the benefits of commercial real estate, but they don't have $1 million or more to put into a project.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So what is different about crowdfunding and commercial real estate today if someone looked at it 2 or 3 years ago as a sponsor or maybe an investor?
It's a good question. We've stayed fairly true to our structure and our strategy. We came from the institutional real estate space, so that was a lot of the folks that we were working with 2-3 years ago. Earlier on, the industry started with a lot of debt products, so hard money loans, single family fix and flip projects. We never got involved in that space. That's just not an area that we chose to try to tackle. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen is just the quality of sponsorship that's attracted to this space, I think, has increased across the board. We're seeing less on that hard money loan side. There's some issues with a couple platforms out there that maybe some deals were going sideways and they've kind of exited that space and they're focusing more on kind of traditional commercial real estate now. So I think the caliber of sponsors has risen across the board. The volume is clearly way up. And I think it's just becoming more of an accepted way as a mainstream method of raising capital. When we started this thing 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Nobody knew. This was an idea. We had a pretty good idea that it was going to work, but we had no idea that nobody had done it before. So we just kind of jumped in and did it. And it's been really fun to see that progression from this fringe experiment on the side to now, we've had $200+ million of equity funded through this thing for institutional quality real estate. To see it on the radar of the big boys now I think we're at a good spot.
Yeah.
Still a lot to.
Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity, because I'm a commercial real estate broker. I help people invest in real estate. But look, if you don't have $1 million cash, brokers like us, it's hard for us to work on things to help you. But crowdfunding is certainly a great way to get the benefits of commercial real estate with smaller amounts of money. And so I think one of the things we'd like to get your opinion on is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, because it seems like that could have a material change in the economy and in commercial real estate. What's it do in your crowdfunding world?
We're still waiting to see how it all is going to shake out. I think political affiliations aside, just as a tax issue for investing in commercial real estate could be a really good thing, right? This 20% pass-through tax deduction, I think, could be a huge impact for investors in platforms like RealCrowd. That's textbook passive investments into commercial real estate. So that income, you take 20% off the top and you pay tax on the rest of the 80%. So I think that could, once that message gets out and is more understood how that actually plays out, I think that could have a really big impact. We're in a really good economy right now. Things are going well. There's a lot of tailwinds behind us, and we're just, our last podcast, we were talking about the same thing. This could be a little extra fuel on the fire. Hopefully it's not too much fuel too fast that causes things to get out of control. So in that sense, we'll see how it plays out. I think for the real estate listeners out there, obviously 1031 exchanges have been a really big part of our world. Those regulations were preserved. I know at one point they were on the chopping block, so to hear that stayed, I think is a good thing for commercial real estate owners out there. And you combine that with this pass-through tax deduction. I think it could be a pretty good thing for our industry once there's more awareness around how it actually is going to impact and people really understand the ramifications of how that's going to impact their investment decisions.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think if you put more money in the hands of U.S. consumers, they've proven they'll spend it. And if companies have lower tax rates and they can hire more folks and grow, should be great for our economy. So tell us something else about the future of crowdfunding. It seems like there's a lot of promise in this industry. There
is. Like I said, we're $4.25 billion of real estate into this, which sounds like a lot, but boy, that's just a sliver of the total volume of commercial real estate activity, right? So we feel the very early stages of this whole industry. We're excited to see where it goes. There's a lot of new technology out in space right now. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the blockchain and crypto technology, crypto tokens and coins, Bitcoins, Ethereum, that's all the rage right now. It's something we're looking at, how it applies to the real estate world, certainly beyond just our industry. The underlying blockchain technology, I think, has some really interesting applications for real estate. Anything that's a recorded transaction that needs to be publicly available and verified by outside sources. Title transfer. That's a natural for this kind of blockchain technology. We were talking yesterday, lease administration, right? CAM reconciliations are the bane of every property manager's existence. If you could have a smart contract, which is just basically computer code that executes based on a set of rules, CAM reconciliation is a thing of the past. It has inputs, it calculates it, it splits it out, and you're done, right? So I think there's a lot of really interesting applications from the technology standpoint that'll affect our space, certainly with the securitization of real estate assets through this blockchain technology, but also just more broadly, how this can impact our industry, which, admittedly, we're relatively slow as an industry to adopt technology. I'd like to see us get, ahead of this. I think there's a lot of good benefits that approach can take to our operations, and hopefully that of the listeners out there too.
Yeah, and I think it would help with transparency, and I think that's something that crowdfunding can offer investors. If you think about investing in the stock market and you're wondering, hey, what's going on behind the scenes? Yeah, what are the fees? Can my investment drop dramatically without me having any idea of what's going on? In commercial real estate, well, you can watch the show for one, and you kind of have some forecasts and know what's going on. But transparency, I guess, is a big part of what you guys do, right?
Yeah, it is, and that's been one of the more uncomfortable parts for real estate sponsors to get comfortable with is the fact this is their public offerings. They're out in the open. So there's going to be additional scrutiny. I think we've been pleasantly surprised with the sophistication of our investor base to be able to kind of cut through some of those things that, if there's questionable terms or if there's a structure that might need to be revisited. The crowd is smart. And I think that's something that we were surprised by was the sophistication of the investors on the network. So the transparency is huge. We operate in a very transparent fashion. We don't add any layers between the investor and their actual investment dollars in the asset. Depending on what platform you go to, look at what you're actually investing in. So make sure there is that transparency, there is that disclosure of fees, which may or may not be there and as transparent as it could be on all the platforms. So I would recommend if you're looking at the space as an investor, peel back those layers, look at those fees, see what the platforms are charging. If there's broker dealers involved, sometimes those can be pretty high fees. There can be a spread between what they're borrowing at and lending it to the borrower. So there's some interesting disclosures and some transparency that might not be as much as we'd hoped, but that is a big thing. And again, blockchain could be the ultimate transparency tool, right? Everything is there in the open, verified by thousands of sources, and we'll see. It could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I urge any investor investing in anything to check it out very closely. Check out the sponsor, check out the property, check out the market, look at a future of what might happen in that market and in that sector. Well, Adam, what would you leave our audience with related to crowdfunding?
So just taking a step back, I think one of the biggest challenges that we've seen in the space as it relates to the investor side is a lot of people are new to this investment in this asset class. So they're not professional real estate experts. They don't have years of experience in this. And so the concept of a risk-adjusted return isn't really native to them, right? They don't have the tools and the knowledge necessary to fully understand the risk that they're taking to get to those returns. And so unfortunately, the behavior that we've seen is people tend to just put their money in the highest yield deals without really looking at the risk that they're taking across their portfolio. And so that's one of the things that we're really looking forward to in 2018. That's why we're doing our podcast, again, realcrowd.com/podcast, all about education, right? Trying to get people to have a better understanding of how this asset class works. If they're looking at deals, if they're looking at different sponsors, what are those questions that you should ask? And then we're going to be providing some tools here, hopefully later Q1, early Q2, that are really going to help investors understand on a risk-adjusted basis, how does their portfolio look risk first, and the returns are almost secondary to building our portfolio based on a risk model. So I think that's something that we're really excited about coming forward in 2018, and we'll see again with the tax bill. Hopefully that'll spur some more investment activity, and we'll just keep going at the races.
That's great. And do you guys have options for investors thinking about investing through crowdfunding and looking at their risk? Do you have the core, opportunistic, or value add? Are there choices for investors there?
Yeah, so we kind of broadly categorize them right now into core plus, value add, and opportunistic. So on the website, realcrowd.com, you can go and you can see which bucket those fall into. But we're going to be getting much more granular in those levels and looking at the market, the capitalization, the sponsor, the structure, the physical assets. So we've got some pretty good tools underway that I think will tell a much better picture for investors out there.
Oh, that's great. Adam, thanks for being with us. Great information.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Michael.
And stay with us. We'll have more on crowdfunding for U.S. commercial real estate investors and sponsors. Stay with us. I'm Michael Bull. This is America's Commercial Real Estate Show.